Baby Reindeer has been an astounding success for Netflix, and in this video we're going to be looking at the characters and analysing what's going on between them and what's going on for them individually from what we can tell as viewers. This is intended purely to comment on the fictional characters in the series and in no way to be about a real person or event. I have watched all of it, so keep in mind that also, spoiler alert, obviously. I have watched the whole thing. I'm not going to jump ahead, but I might be referencing themes that are developing later in the series based on the clues that we get from this episode. So episode 1 starts with the main character, Donnie, going to the police after 6 months of being stalked. This is the first clue we get that Donnie is not your typical type of person, because 6 months of being stalked is intense and you're not likely to wait that long to go to the police. Donnie meets the character Martha, who enters the bar that he works at looking very sad, depressed, closed in on herself, and approaches the bar timidly. When Donnie asks what she'd like, she says nothing, she can't afford it. He says that he'll give her a cup of tea for free. The first thing Donnie says here that gives us a clue as to the dynamic is going to develop is, I felt sorry for her. And he acknowledges that this is a bad feeling, or at least it's not one that holds the other person in high esteem. He says it's an arrogant feeling or something like that. And I think this goes to show that Donnie begins by looking down at Martha to begin with. Once Martha is offered this tea, her expression changes dramatically. She looks incredibly hopeful, and this really opens up her body language and energy. She then begins to share a lot of detail about how glamorous her life is, particularly that she owns a law firm and is a part of high-profile cases, knows famous politicians, etc. This juxtaposition with the fact that she couldn't even afford a single drink in this bar makes it quite obvious that she is either lying or something strange is happening, and she's not disclosing exactly why she's in that situation. She continues with this level of grandiosity, bragging, to show off, as if now that she's been given the opportunity to be seen, she has a performance to give. And she delivers it very well. Donnie gets completely entrapped by her way of delivering this story and her laughter, which he finds unfiltered and sweet, also a little bit disturbing, but very intriguing. He begins to pay quite a lot of attention to this performance of hers. We then see Donnie starting to look at his own life with regards to his comedy career that he's been trying to get off the ground in London. And he's expressing how difficult it is. You're a tiny fish in a huge pond, and that you appear to be an extra in a sea of millions of people. And as a comedian, his job is to shine in these particular ways, to get people's attention, to make them laugh, to entertain. And he starts to express how he's really having trouble doing that. So you can see there's a level of dissatisfaction Donnie has with his life. However, now he starts to notice that Martha is coming back every day, spending the whole shift with him, 6 hours, maybe 8 hours, saying, oh, I've got to go, but I'm here for a quick chat. Another blatant lie, because she stays there for the entire shift. Donnie begins to see the value in Martha's attention. He's become quite dependent on it. He says something like, when someone sees you as you want to be seen, you notice that he is actually starting to need or want Martha's attention as an antidote to his feeling of failure with regards to his career in comedy. Martha starts to push the boundaries after this, once they've developed rapport, and she makes this comment about you can't stand still the whole time, basically not living a stagnant life. And this is seen to be a comment towards Donnie and the fact that he works in a pub, lives with his ex-girlfriend's mother rent-free, and has this aspiring but failing career in comedy going on. Donnie notices this shift, where she's making a criticism of him for the first time. He looks hurt for a moment. She immediately pulls back and says, oh, I don't know what came over me, I woke up on the wrong side of the bed, something to that effect. So you can see that Martha is quite in tune with his feelings through this one moment, this one facial expression, where he responds to what she'd said. And she can see that she's inflicted some sort of anxiety in him, or he's insulted. And she pulls back. You'll see that this leaning in, going too far, and pulling back is a theme for both of them. The other part that this pulling and pushing is seen early on is that Donnie begins to make a lot of jokes with Martha, provocative jokes or innuendos, a lot of the time led by Martha, but he does lean into it. And every time he goes a little bit too far, sees that she's taking it too seriously, he pulls it back. It seems like he wants to get her attention, to keep her captured, but not so much that she actually starts to develop an interest in him, insofar as he can control that. So they're playing this kind of dance where Donnie wants to get the laugh, and he'll do whatever he can to get it, but he doesn't want to go too far because that's perhaps seen as commitment or an expression of real interest. Martha is nice, but just when she starts to feel comfortable, she might make a comment to chip at his ego, to make him realize that he's not so perfect, even though she idolizes him a lot and compliments him constantly. Perhaps to enable her to manipulate him more, or she doesn't know another way to communicate with people, and she's starting to feel that. Eventually, Martha gets so comfortable that she asks him to a picnic for her birthday. He agrees, but later pulls out because he can see that it's too intimate, and she's considering it as such. He said, friends don't go to picnics, lovers do that. And she says, what do friends do? And that might have been just to understand his view on what would be okay for friends to do. But actually it was quite a sad moment because it suggested that the character genuinely doesn't know those kinds of social norms and perhaps is really in need of that level of guidance from others to understand what is appropriate and what's not. Then yet another innuendo or intimate joke from Donnie to diffuse tension, because that's what he likes to do, is to get attention, affirmation from the laughter, but also to get his way out of awkward situations, silences, things like that. His colleagues are making fun of their whole dynamic and saying, oh, when are you going to ask her to marry you? When are you going to do the deed, etc. Effectively, he makes a strong innuendo to get out of the awkward conversation. You can see that Martha has taken it seriously and Donnie knows that. There's something about this joke, the most suggestive and directly linking to being intimate with Martha. She didn't just do her disturbing laugh, she actually just glared at him. This seems to be some sort of shift, that this ability to fantasize about intimacy in this way and thinking that he is thinking about it made her cross some sort of threshold. She then starts to send him a lot of disturbing messages, unprocessed, a lot of mistakes in them, which to me seemed like she was trying to appear casual in the way that she was approaching these messages. Perhaps she's living such a busy lifestyle and has such a demanding job that she has no time to check her spelling. She does other things to make her seem like she's on the go, such as putting the subtitle "sent from iPhone," which she's typing manually because Danny has seen her phone and it was a Nokia, not an iPhone. When they do eventually go to this coffee for her birthday instead of the picnic, you can see the first crack with regards to Martha's ability to control herself. Martha is actually telling Donnie, I can take it if you're going to reject me, but tell me if you're actually interested or not. She says, oh, it would be a shame because you got my hopes up, but I would work through it. She's giving him a way out, but he is unable to sit with that discomfort and go through with it, meaning tell her, no, I'm not interested. Instead, he makes a joke of it yet again, and it puts her back into the position of giggling, giving him what he wants, making him feel good in return for seeming so funny, and he gets to escape the awkward conversation by cowarding away with the joke. Martha starts to push this boundary, seeing that they are getting more intimate. He didn't say that he was interested. He did say, I'm serious about you as a friend. So this seems enough for Martha at this point. She hasn't been entirely rejected, which was perhaps the only thing she would have taken as a rejection. Any grey space will not be seen as a rejection. They are getting comfortable again, and Martha's pattern is to push that boundary. She starts making comments about Donnie's comedy videos, saying that his comedy was poor quality, thinly veiled satire and such, directly insulting his work. He gets agitated, but she seems to continue to push until he shows some vulnerability where he says, please don't tell anyone at work about this, meaning at the bar that he works. She sees that he has this vulnerability and she's made him sad. Perhaps she has some control over him now. And she goes back to being sweet. She says, no, of course not. You should be proud. You're putting yourself out there. You're pursuing your dream. The complete opposite. She's criticizing his work, saying that it wasn't any good, and then saying you're admirable because you're chasing your dream. She then is under the belief that she's clocked onto Donnie's weakness, that he's actually been hurt before, and this has led to a certain depth of insecurity on his part. She then probes what happened, who was it heartbreak, was it a woman, and then starts asking for names. She's digging, trying to get on an intimate level, becoming obsessive, hinting at some sort of aggression perhaps to the suspected perpetrator who hurt Donnie, and he pulls away, and this is where we see the crack with Martha. When he pulls his hand away from her because she was holding onto it and wouldn't let go even though he asked to, she screams, don't you dare, in a very loud and aggressive tone, which actually doesn't sound like her voice up until this point. She also doesn't make eye contact with him when she screams this. She stares down, either at the table or at his chest. And the whole cafe, of course, notices this. It's a small cafe. Donnie is frightened. She realizes, and you can see some remorse or regret, maybe some fear, pass across her face. And they pretend it didn't happen. Their food arrives. There was something about his pulling away that made her extremely angry or afraid, rageful. This adds a new dimension to what she's capable of and the potential sensitivities that she has. Her fear of abandonment seems to be closely tied with this. But after they say goodbye, he decides to follow her home. He says that he's curious about what kind of person this is, why she keeps up all these lies, how she could have been so emotional in this cafe, and why is she interested in him? Interesting that he says that at this point. He's going to follow her home after she's been verbally aggressive to him in public, the most dangerous she's seemed so far. And the last sentence he says before he follows her is, why is she interested in me? Most of us might take this opportunity to exclude ourselves from ever being exposed to this person again. but not Donnie. Donnie seems to be in need and hungry for attention. That's someone who's giving him this level of attention despite the aggression brimming just beneath the surface. He wants to know. He's curious. He wants to get closer to her by knowing her life and seeing her private life. He gets caught at the window. She sees him. They then see each other again at one of Donnie's comedy shows, where he is bombing until Martha saves him by giggling from the crowd. This creates a spectacle that Donnie can riff off of, so he starts to highlight that she's the only person laughing, that her laugh is unique and noticeable, and this gives him an in to start to be funny. So she kind of saves him by being a source of laughter in that moment of need, and he takes that opportunity. Martha also takes the opportunity because she then says, "I can sing," and offers to do so. She sings an emotional romantic song with the lyrics, "And then I went and spoiled it all by saying something stupid like I love you." She then sits down and the crowd claps for her. It seems like she was able to give her own performance here too. Donnie was saved from the embarrassment of the beginning of his act. By giving him this lifeline, she's able to share this direct message of affection through this song. Next, they meet each other after the gig, and she compliments him similarly by saying that he has comedy in his bones and he's meant to do this. He seems to really appreciate that, and they have a moment of connection there. It does become a tender moment, and though he does call her utterly mad in a jokey way, she hugs him and she asks what superpower he would have. This is a very telling part of the episode. He says that he would want to know what people are thinking. She asks, "Is that because you think people are thinking negatively of you?" And he says, "No, I'm scared that people aren't thinking of me at all," highlighting his crippling inability to see himself as someone worthy of attention and thought from other people, indicative of very low self-esteem. Martha shares what her superpower would be. She hoped she could open people using a skin zip from the chin to the belly button so she could crawl into them and become cozy and safe. This is also telling of Martha because this metaphor gives the suggestion that she can only seek refuge within other people by almost becoming them, by being engulfed by their entire being. And she's willing, in a way, to sacrifice who she is, perhaps in order to gain entry. She wants to open the zip by being what she needs to be, but ultimately her goal is to become one with the other person. This suggests that she doesn't feel comfortable in her own skin, more than that her life doesn't have much value to her outside of fixating on people who to her appear to be worthy of this adornment, to be captured entirely by another person's existence. Martha sings that song again from the comedy act. They have this moment where Donnie says his ending for that song, a joke which he made during the act, and she says, "I love you," which is the original lyric. And then I go and spoil it all by saying something stupid like, and Donnie says Hitler was misunderstood, and Martha says, "I love you." Here we see a strong contrast between the stupidity of each of them. For Donnie, it's his endless pursuit of the joke, even if the joke is crass, too bold to be funny, or just straight up awkward and strange. Whereas for Martha, it's her delusion around loving him. And somehow these two are speaking to each other, saying exactly that thing that is driving them. And it's through the crash of these two desires, these people are going to become connected, and most of the trouble is going to start. So let's talk a little bit about the themes of what we've seen in the first episode. I think we're seeing a lot of what brings Donnie to where he is now, particularly with regards to his failed ambitions to become a successful comedian. So far, we don't know what's gotten him there. Here we see he is deeply dissatisfied with where he's at, both in his life and his career, stuck in the same place, which Martha alluded to in her comment. I consider her observant and intelligent. Her inability is in controlling herself and maintaining boundaries of any sort. She is delusional. But when she's not being a delusional, she seems to be sharp. What have we seen with Martha? Well, we saw a very quick transformation from someone who was shy, defeated, looked depressed in those first moments in the episode, to suddenly becoming this bubbly, effervescent, giggly woman just by being given a little bit of attention from this man she's just met. Which makes me think, what has she put into the idea of who he is to make her feel so able to flip the switch and become this character? And which is the real her? Because we see that in the beginning, there is the sad insecure, then there's the grand actress, let's say, and then there's the woman in the cafe who bursts out screaming in anger, saying, "Don't you dare." I think if we stay in this theme of boundaries, there are also inner boundaries of this part of yourself, that part of yourself. The part of yourself that goes to work is quite different to the part of yourself that's home with your family or friends. We're all able to highlight particular parts of our personalities for the context. It seems like for Martha, they are perhaps created to counterbalance others, i.e. the depressed one counterbalanced by the larger-than-life, super successful lawyer persona she puts forward. And then somewhere in there is this intense anger and insecurity around being abandoned. The unfortunate thing that we're seeing here is that Donnie needs attention, and Martha only needs a little bit of attention to start becoming obsessed with Donnie and putting an incredible amount of effort to get his attention, to be around him every day that he's working, and to send him emails multiple times a day, actually in the hundreds, I think, per day, in a very strange format as well. When she's at the bar, her jokes are still a bit strange, but they're not out of the realms of possibility for that setting. Yet the emails are bizarre, and she makes graphic references to her body. She's less inhibited in that setting when she's alone and behind the privacy of a screen. To summarize, what's happening here is we're seeing that even though you might assume that Martha is the one who's obsessed, and of course she is, Donnie has not been able to make a clear reference to the fact that he is not interested. He's not able to turn down Martha's advances. He's not able to communicate what he really wants. Instead, he plays games, he laughs and jokes with her, leading someone on who is interested in you in a romantic or intimate way, but he pulls back just at the very last minute, sometimes having gone too far, when he realizes he's getting into dangerous territory. But it seems he's not scared of this danger enough to pull away. He's not scared enough to put an end to this. So is he being an enabler by doing all of this? Well, another thing we see at the end is that he accepts her Facebook requests, even though he's just found out online that she has a history of stalking. And I think she was in jail for 4.5 years. So Martha has been imprisoned for stalking, and yet he, just after finding that out, accepts her request on Facebook. Another thing then we're seeing is his inability to draw boundaries is very obvious here. He has no regard for his own safety, or perhaps he thinks the trade-off is worth it and this is not enough damage to push away someone that's giving him so much affirmation and attention. Or maybe he doesn't know how to pull away. Maybe he doesn't know how to say no to people. Maybe he's had that boundary violated too many times to know when enough is enough. But I suppose we'll find that out in another episode. Thanks for sticking around, and let me know in the comments what you thought about the episode. Look after yourself.